Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to another video. Nice to see you. If you haven't seen me before, my name is Amber Overanalyzes, and today I will be overanalyzing the show 86. Now, I think this show is extremely good. It's probably one of my favorite shows I've seen in the last, 6 months for the first time at least. And I just think you need to know about it because it is so good. And I tried, when I actually finished, there's 11 episodes so far, well 12, but 11 of the story and one that is a special. And once I finished, I looked on YouTube and I was like, wow, no one's really talking about the show. I think there's a few videos, but I feel like it's not getting as much hype or whatever as I would want, so I had to talk about it. I think you'll like this show if you like Attack on Titan, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. Amazing show also. You'll like it if you have played the Trails of Cold Steel series, which I've talked about in some other videos. I think you'll like it if you like a military drama, but also if you like stories about, social issues, or you like, stories with really good characters and drama and a bit of heartbreak, but not in the way you're thinking. I wouldn't say it's like, a love story per se, but there's love elements, but I would say it's more, there's heartbreaking parts having to do with the situation the characters are put in. But it has such a good payoff, and there's twists that I did not see coming that were just so good. And what else can I talk about before I get, I'm gonna do a non-spoilery part, and then I'm gonna do a spoilery part. But the non-spoilery part is hard because I'm like it's like, how much do you want to know, beforehand going in? But I think, what can I tell you about it, non-spoilery? So, if you like a story with a huge cast and a story where you have to really get to know people over time, this is a good one. But also, it's very interesting to me. I like that the protagonist is a female. I feel like in a lot of military shows, it's not usually a female, I don't think. Then again, I haven't watched as much anime as a lot of people, or military shows, so could be wrong. But I do like that, and I like that. I would say this show has a more humanist sort of element to it about war. So it's not going to be like, oh, just fighting and that's it kind of a thing, which I find kind of boring. I don't want to just watch battles for no reason. Not that there's anything wrong with that, just not for me. I get bored very easily. So if I like something, it's extremely entertaining, at least to me, hopefully to you too. I can give you a little brief synopsis. So our main character is Lena, and Lena works in the military for a republic, and I forget the name of the republic, so I will put that in later. I have to look it up. But she works with a republic. And its ideals are, these very great ideals of justice and, freedom and individuality. And, it's you go into the story and it's this powerful empire, and everyone, seems so happy, and it's like a utopia. And of course, it is not a utopia. Spoiler for episode 1, not a utopia, I would say. So why is it not a utopia? Well, most people there think it is. Most people love it. They think it's great. They go, hey, no one's dying in our war. That's a thing they're talking about. No death. We're fighting this war, apparently, with all AI or mech machines that are fully automated. And the only people who die are pigs. Or they don't say people. The only beings that die are pigs. Well, what does that mean? Well, pigs, or whatever you want to call them, yeah, they're not pigs, they're people, and they're operating these mecha. And I find that very interesting because in the future we're gonna have warfare, probably with mecha or machines. I mean, we already kind of do. And I'm like, I can just imagine that future would be terrifying. And basically what's happened, and this is again just episode 1 spoiler, so you know, don't watch if you don't want an episode 1 spoiler, or come back. But basically what happens is there's these basically every race, except for the one race that's like the ultimate race, has been classified as not human. So no humans are dying because they're not humans, even though they're humans. And as you can tell, that made me upset just watching it, and really made me identify with Lena and, you know, her situation in terms of like, you know, I think you as the audience identify with Lena because you're like, okay, this is crazy, and Lena thinks this is crazy. But everyone else, including her best friend Annette, thinks it's normal, or is at least acting like it's normal, and it's fine because they're not people, apparently. Not people. So that's kind of a beginning synopsis of the story. And now I'll get into spoilery talk about, you know, what I thought of the show and why I think it's so great and all of that. So this is your warning. If you don't want any spoilers, which I recommend watching the show, then you can come back. Because it's just more fun if you don't get spoilers. So come back. But if you have seen it, then keep watching if you want to. Something I thought it was very interesting. We'll start with like, you know, just talking about the beginning. So one of my favorite things is Lena's relationship with Shin, or the Undertaker. It's very, very interesting because Lena comes from a place of privilege. Her father, as we know because we've watched it, hopefully, her father really cares about the people in 86, the people in the district who have been sentenced to, you know, being machines. Well, being machines. She cares about them, and her father cared about them, and you know, her father died, and so I think that gave her a perspective of empathy, especially being saved by Shin's brother. Shin's brother helped her really, I think, see that these people were human, and that was good, obviously. But it's interesting how even her uncle, you know, there's this quote her uncle says, and I think it's in the trailer. So Lena's uncle says, "It was too soon for freedom and equality. As humans, it will probably always be too soon." And I thought that quote, I don't know if it's in the manga too, but whoever wrote it, it was like really touching. And I feel like it made me really sad because it's not just true in that world, it's true in our world. And yeah, it makes you, this show makes you feel stuff, including that quote. Like, I just thought that was very, very, very good. And there's another quote said by Shin, which is also in the trailer, but it was like towards the last couple episode where, you know, he says something about like, remember us, leave a flower for us, like when we're gone, kind of a thing. And that was also very emotional. Anyways, Lena and Shin, again, get back to that for a minute, is such an interesting dynamic because you have Lena, who's very privileged, and then you have Shin, who has been through stuff with his family. He's been through stuff just being an 86. And, you know, as we find out watching the show, he lived like in the first district in a really nice part of town before him and other 86 are, you know, basically became ostracized and forced to fight a war and were not classified as human anymore. So he was like he was Lena's friend, Annette's neighbor, right? And they were friends and they played, and like he was just a normal kid. And then he literally, because of his race and his skin and eye color, I guess, got like, you know, taken to be an 86 and with the rest of his family, which, you know, leads to his brother being really stressed out and choking him and almost killing him, which is really intense. But it does make you think about how PTSD, like that's a real thing that happens in real life. Like soldiers go to war and they come back and they're never the same, and they have PTSD and they have psychological trauma, which makes sense. Not condoning what happened, just saying that people react kind of crazy because they were in crazy situations. And what happened to Shin is really sad, and it makes you think about, you know, not just, I think the reason I love the show so much, it doesn't make you just think about how awful the war is in the show or the situation in the show. It makes you think about real life issues that, you know, are good to think about. And, you know, if people aren't aware of how bad war is, or people aren't aware of, you know, the issues that come up, then we can't fix it as a society. So, and I've noticed that, I think one of the reasons I'm so attracted to Japanese stories in general too is because I think they talk about how war can be a bad thing, you know. It's not like propagandized, it's not glorified. We see the real issues that come about in families, like with Shin and his brother, and obviously things like the inequality, like certain people had to go to war and certain people didn't, at least not the dangerous parts of war. Obviously Lena and other people like her are still involved in the war, but they're not doing like the killing or the being killed. So thought that was interesting. But I thought the dynamic was so interesting because you have this guy who has dealt with so much, and Lena's dealt with a lot too, I guess, but not in the, you know, it's not the same. But they have this connection, and it's interesting to see how even with a connection in a certain situation, it kind of doesn't matter. Like, I don't know. I mean, I've only watched 11 episodes, so I don't know what's going to happen. But, you know, the outside forces really affected their potential for a relationship. And I love too in the show how Lena really learns to empathize beyond, like it's like she I think from the beginning she cares about the 86, but she doesn't understand their experience. And that's kind of what they're telling her, you know, like, yeah, you might care about us, but you're not here. You're not dealing with the things we're dealing with. And you can say you care, and maybe you do, but it's not the same as being a part of our group and literally risking your life every day. And I thought that was cool that the show actually called that out. It wasn't like, oh, she cares, so she's great. It had a lot more gray of like, hey, she cares, which is great, but, you know, she doesn't, maybe there's certain things she hasn't thought of, like these people have names, right? That's a big thing, is she doesn't ask their names until later on in the show. And it's not like she intentionally was unempathetic, but it didn't cross her mind until they said something. And I think the show does a good job too of sort of, I think that's a good example of what we could learn as people. It's like a skill, is that, you know, sometimes when it comes to in real life, like issues, you know, that you might not know about, or stereotyping or whatever, I just think it's a good, you know, a good thing to think about for all of us, you know, is, are people oppressed, and how can I help them, and how can I understand what they're going through, because I might not be going through it myself, and there's things I'm not thinking about. And I think Lena, that's kind of what she's going through. So I thought that was cool, like there's just so much I feel like you could talk about with the show underneath the surface. By the way, the show is also very entertaining and has lots of twists, and you're like, what's gonna happen next, and there's fights. And so if that's what you're looking for, you know, definitely watch the show. Don't just listen to my over-analysis and think it's like, oh, it's so heavy. I mean, it is heavy, but it's also entertaining, for sure. Annette's an interesting character in her story because, you know, she's sort of dealt with this trauma with Shin, and, you know, I think feels a lot of guilt for how she handled, you know, this situation. But instead of dealing with that guilt or feeling the guilt, it's like she put a block. So instead of humanizing the 86 more because of her experience with Shin, or because of the guilt, you know, trying to move forward and process and understand why that was wrong, what she did with reporting him, and his family, I think, and bullying him at school, I think she kind of put a block up. Like, it's like it was so much, she just couldn't deal with it. And I think that makes her an interesting character because she's not a fully bad person. She feels bad for what she did. But she's kind of, her behavior is that of sort of a bad person, right? Not that she's fully bad, just her behaviors have not been ethical, we'll say. So I thought she was a very interesting character, an interesting like friend to Lena, where they were friends, but then she wasn't fully supportive of Lena as her 100% true self, or Lena trying to grow and Lena trying to understand the 86 and the social injustice of the situation. Her uncle was also very interesting to me, Lena's uncle, because he clearly understands the ideals, right? Like in that quote I was talking about. But it's like he's so cynical that he's given up on trying. So I'm interested to know in like part 2, season 2, whatever you want to call it, what happened. I'm hoping to find out, I don't know, but what happened to him or what made him this way, because he clearly has some good observations. It just seems like he's just given up, you know. All right, Anju is a very interesting character to me because she's half of the race of people that is like protected or considered people in the Republic of Magnolia. And I thought her relationship with Daya, that was interesting. Anju was interesting because she was obviously bullied for being like a half Republic person. But she obviously identified with 86, and I thought it was interesting, she didn't have any, I don't know, it was interesting that they do that to her, but I guess if you look at history, it makes sense that it happened. But her relationship was very sweet, and I wish they had shown more of it, honestly, before he died. That would have been cool. I think that was probably my favorite. I really like Shin and Lena's relationship, but Daya and Anju's is probably my favorite because they have a more even playing field, and they're in the same situation together and kind of dealing with it, and together they have this cute little flirtationship, and it's very sad when he died. Raiden I think he's entertaining, you know, kind of quiet. It'd be interesting to know more about his character, but you know, I don't know what happens at the end of episode 11 because like they leave it kind of vague. Like, I can guess. So I hope he lives and we can find out more about him and all these characters, but I don't know, like, what if they all die and like Lena's the only one alive, and I don't know. Karena I found kind of annoying. Just personal preference, like there's nothing wrong with her. I don't know. Just not very interesting to me. Theo was interesting to me because he's the one who talked about like not thinking about our names, or like he kind of like told Lena about how she could be more empathetic. So I think clearly he had some hope in there that like she was still gonna care, or that it was possible for some people in the public to care. Like he wasn't fully cynical. Some other stuff I really liked, or that was like, oh, so interesting or heartbreaking, was like the robot who was like a human, and he took the recording of everything with the end song. Just, oh, if you haven't seen it, just oh, so good. Just go watch it. Like, I can't even put into words just how interesting that was, right? Because the whole time you think he's a dog, or then you think he's a robot and he's a human. And it makes you think about like consciousness too, and like, you know, could a human consciousness exist in a robot, and what would that be like, and what would it be like to be a robot like that and be treated kind of like you're a dog, but you're a very intelligent, not that dogs aren't intelligent, but you know, you're a very intelligent being, like you're a human, brain-wise. Just very interesting. I thought the mechanic, and I forgot his name, but his story was heartbreaking but interesting, and I just think they cover so much in this show. Like, I could go on forever, honestly. Because, you know, it has all these themes. It has themes of, you know, genocide that happened. And it has a lot of, you know, callbacks to things that happened in World War II. And granted, things that are happening today. And just a lot of heavy topics, but they're very good. And I love that it's sort of modernized, where you have the technology aspect along with issues in World War II, so you can really see what that would look like. Like, hey, you know, what would happen in this scenario today if humans had to operate machinery like that? And humans could be taken over by the Legion, and, you know, their brains could be used, basically harvested for other countries' warfare. Another thing I'm curious about is the country where the Legion are from actually gone? Or are there people living there and we just don't know? And I wonder if that's why they have the 86, the writers have the 86 going sort of like in Legion land. Like, are they gonna find something? Are they going to die? I don't know, but it's very interesting. And I'm very interested to find out what happens with Lena too, because as it ends, you know, she's walking with the cat, she's on the railroad, and she has the journal, which, by the way, speaking of, I thought that was interesting how she found the journal where they all wrote messages to her, everyone from the 86. They were able to sort of leave something behind for her, and clearly there was a real human connection there. And I think, you know, they all sort of bonded in the end. But yeah, I'm interested to know where she's going. Is she going to find them? Is she gonna end up coming back? I doubt it. Something's clearly is going to happen, and I'm so curious to know what's going to happen. So if you've watched 86, which I hope you have, because it's so good, go watch, seriously. If you've watched it, let me know in the comments below what your theories are, unless you've read the manga, because I don't want spoilers. But if you have theories, let me know about what's gonna happen in part 2. I honestly feel like it could go so many different ways, and I'm very excited. I think it comes out in like a couple weeks. It starts coming out, so I'll have updates for you guys on my thoughts for those. So yeah, thanks for watching this video, and like and subscribe if you want more of this stuff, and feel free to leave me a comment, not just about this video, but just what you want me to talk about next or watch next, because so far it's just been stuff I like. But if you think I'd like something, I'm looking for X. Alright, thank you, goodbye.